Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. We'll be getting started in just a minute. All right. Well, welcome and good afternoon or good morning. We are here for today's webinar, Governing Microsoft Teams 101 with CDH's Ryan Charnock. How are you doing today, Ryan?
Hey, doing pretty good. How you doing, Meg?
Absolutely wonderful. Can't wait to hear what you have to teach us today.
Sounds good. Let's roll. All right, guys. Well, hi everybody. I'm Ryan from CDH. We're a local consulting firm here in the Michigan area, and we're leading thought, design, and all things collaboration, UI, UX development, and infrastructure for Office 365. So we've been in business for the last since 1990, and we've weathered the storm of technology change. So that's kind of one of the unique things that our firm is different than others. Okay. If you know me, great. That's awesome. Good to see you guys. I was for 12 years. I was an instructor for New Horizons. So if you took a SharePoint class from like the years 2007 through, I don't know, 2014 or so, you probably had me as an instructor. So if you're a previous student, good to see you. Hi, good to see you guys. I'm also did a whole bunch of work at Chrysler and did a whole bunch of process automation and worked on their SharePoint farm there in collaboration and defined their governance and workflows and processes there. And that's my role here at CDH. I am the lead of the collaboration team here, and we deal with Office 365, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, and anything that has to do with like employee engagement, collaboration, that kind of stuff. I live here in southern Michigan, kind of downriver, and that's where I'm at. And I'd love to connect with you guys. I'm on Twitter. I'm posting pretty often. I'm at Ryan Charnock 9, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So I usually post about once or twice a week content about similar kind of nature like this, Teams, governance, Microsoft Flow, Power Apps, that kind of stuff. And so love to connect with you and have you guys subscribe. Alrighty, so moving on. So we're going to talk a little bit about context. These are kind of similar problems that everybody's facing. Number one thing is, every organization, doesn't matter who you are, they have users that have a hard time finding data, okay? Gardner says, hey, it's about 48 hours a week, we're just finding information. Another problem that everyone could agree to is that we get too much email, right? So on average, it's about 122. I'm probably, if we polled you as an audience, some would be higher, some would be lower, but if I had a button for you to press that says, just give me less email, you'd be like, yeah, sign me up, I want that, okay? Another scenario or problem we're interested in trying to solve is that where collaboration is kind of the norm. Like we don't want decisions made unilaterally. We want to be done in a group context and having people be a part of that conversation. So the need for collaboration is in the back of our mind, but maybe the tool set we're using is really, really low. So that's kind of one of the contexts kind of for all this change. The other item that we're looking to solve is we're also dealing with the issue that not all the employees are in the same local centralized office. We have people that are in different regional offices and geographically working from home. So how do we make them so they don't feel like second-class citizens, okay? So then the last kind of scenario I have is this is a traditional problem is we have what's called deploy or department isolation. So depending on what department you're in, you are authoritative for that stuff, but it's hard to kind of get to know and understand what's going on in the business culture outside of what your department is. So these are all kind of issues that we've been facing. And so Microsoft's really answered it with this great tool called Microsoft Teams, okay? And Office 365, it has a whole series of tools to help address some of those different issues. So Teams has been released. It's been, I don't know, it's maybe about 1.5 years old, and it has just been, it's Microsoft's fastest growing product. It's now free for users to use, excuse me, to use, and so people can use it even without, okay, the business context of an Office 365 license. It's also being widely adopted in the education space. So universities are using a team for each particular class and a channel for like chapters or even just classes that they're holding. So there's a huge amount of adoption and use of these, and people are really gravitating it. It resonates them pretty high. So with that, I think that's kind of we'd all kind of are rowing in the same boat that, hey, this Teams thing is really, really exciting. It's something new. I haven't seen something like this before. Okay. But then the question comes in now, how can anything this good be so bad? Or how can it be bad? And I think of it like chocolate cake. How can anything so good, like German chocolate cake, be bad? Well, if you have too much of it, not enough of it, see what I did there? Okay. And so there has to be a way to kind of manage this stuff. And so when it comes to managing teams, it's like a diet. Okay. Diets can be really, really restrictive, or they can be really, really passive and really allowing. And so the key is to find kind of that Goldilocks kind of middle ground, or the place where it works really good for your organization. So I've had some organizations where they really want to have teams incredibly clamped down and very restrictive. Where I've had other organizations where I've talking them through with them, and they're like, I don't want to manage this, and I just want to just enable people to just do and just collaborate at will. And so they have a much freer flowing or least restrictive kind of scenario. And so that's kind of where we're trying to get to, is help you, give you enough stuff to help you decide where in this realm is. Okay. And that's kind of a lot of the engagements I do with customers, is I sit down and it's like a conversation. I ask questions and I say, well, hey, do you want to enable teams for anybody to create? They say yes, or they say no, and I go, are you sure? Because that means this or it means that. And it's a lot of this great conversation and thinking. So it's a lot of fun. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so step number one. Okay, if I'm sitting down with you for the first time, the first thing to think about is a little bit of strategy. Okay, and kind of define what is the generalized purpose of Microsoft Teams. What do you want to do? What is its goal? Why does it even exist? Okay, is that I got it kind of really scripted here. Define and communicate the purpose and goal, right? And I kind of gave you some examples. All right, maybe it's to increase collaboration. Maybe it's to have a unified collaboration tool, communication tool. Maybe it's to reduce email. Maybe it's to engage with remote employees or attract a younger workforce. Now, these are just stuff I hear all the time, right? But the key is, there is most likely your organization has like a this year's strategy, right? Like from your C executive type of suite. They've come to us and says, we really want to pump employee engagement. We want to be a family, right? They have these words they want to use. And so the key thing here, folks, is you want to start tying this IT tool to that strategy. So that way someone's, why are we using Teams? This thing's ridiculous. You say, well, and you can defend it. Well, it's because we're really key on employee engagement and collaboration with Microsoft. This is the Microsoft leading tool to do that. And it's easy to roll out. And plus it comes with our subscriptions, zero cost. Like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense, right? And so that's the idea, is start defining just some high level strategies about what you want to use this thing for. All right. Next, you have to begin to communicate that purpose and goal. You have to let people know. It says, hey, by the way, we are using Teams for this. We want to be using Teams for this. Vice versa. This should be your instant message. This is how you should schedule meetings. This is how we want to, this is the mobile client we want you to put on your phones so you can work at all hours of the night. No. But just, you can decide. Now you can, once you start making those decisions, you have to come up with a way, you have to communicate those decisions out to the users. So now let's think about this for a second. Now, what if you don't do that? What could happen, right? Okay, so here's a couple options. Number one, you got a lot of inefficiencies. Okay, so if you don't define the purpose of a tool, people just use the tool for whatever they want. So here we go. I got a whole bunch of like woodworking tools. All right, let's say your job is to chop down a tree. Which of these tools would you use? Shocker, the Husqvarna, right? You would all probably gonna use that, all right? Unless you have a huge aversion to chainsaws, all right? But if you did choose to chop down a tree with the little hatchet, it probably won't. You'll get there, but it won't be as effective, and you will be a bad use of your time. For example, I was camping once with a whole bunch of friends, and I was a teenager, and a friend of mine's, we had like the afternoon to kill and just kind of chill out. Okay, we're canoeing, and my buddy's like, hey, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna chop down a tree. I'm like, that's amazing. And he holds up his little hatchet, just like that, with this. I'm like, you go for it. I'm gonna take a nap. Okay, so 5 hours later, Dave chopped down his tree, right? And that's how he chose to use his spare time. But the problem is, when I'm at work, this is not spare time, right? time is money, and time is also like I want to do purposeful things. I want my job and my time to matter. So using the most efficient tool that has defined purpose is really important. And that's what step one is. Define the purpose. You're defining, hey, use case. When you're going to meet with a whole bunch of people, use Microsoft Teams, add them in and create channels for your different topics. Okay. And so that way people have an idea, oh, this is my acceptable framework for use. Okay. That's the first thing, is you guys are going to have efficiencies or lack of them if you don't define it. The next thing you'll have is you'll have lack of adoption. Okay. So if you don't define the use, okay, a lot of organizations already have a Skype implementation, which does chat, and you can see some meeting stuff in there, and you can look up employees. You can kind of find out who's who, what's what, and organizational chart stuff. Okay, but if you introduce Teams, now you got two tools. Okay, both they overlap and they do some pretty similar things. Okay, and like the Robert Frost poem goes, two paths diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled. If you give people choice, they might choose wrong. They might choose the ineffective one. They might choose the one that's less used. And so now we have a whole channel of people, a whole group of people that are chatting through Skype, and different group of people that are now using the chat mechanisms through Teams. And so it's kind of this haves and haves not, and the lack of, we're not having a unified use of tool. And you guys get more efficiencies and more bang for your buck the more everybody kind of opts in. That's how it works. So if you don't define the purpose, you don't communicate it out, okay? You can define it, but if you don't communicate it, people don't know. And it creates this indecision moment, and they're just they'll not adopt. They maybe won't even adopt either one, just because like, I don't even know what to do, so I just didn't use any of them, right? That's the classic story of the person who says, I didn't know what to do with this stuff, so I buried all my stuff. So just that way I didn't lose anything. So very, very conservative mind people might actually be frozen with indecision. So that's super important, is that next thing that can happen is your lack of adoption. The last thing you can have is if you don't define the purpose and communicate it, you can have the misuse of the tool. Okay, so people use it now improperly, right? So someone uses their chainsaw to cut butter. Okay, they don't use it appropriately. And so I got this picture of a playhouse because years ago we lived in this really small house with a small yard, but I had 4 kids, small kids at home, and so we couldn't move during this phase of our life. So to get a bigger yard, so we built this big playhouse. Now this isn't the picture of a playhouse, but it's pretty similar, just a little bit. It was literally a little bit bigger. Okay, and so we kind of went up. Right? And so we spent like this whole summer, my wife and I, kind of constructing it, designing it, customizing this really, really cool thing. And we're like, the kids are going to love this. Okay, so we get done and we kind of like a little party and unveiled it. We communicated to them, told them this is what it's for. It was amazing. And then kids started playing on it. 5 minutes later, you know what they did? They came right up to us and says, we're bored. And my wife and I, we were about to lose our minds. All right. And the whole point of that is that they just didn't understand how to play in this new environment. Okay. And that's what also can happen inside Teams. Okay. It's a new environment. And if you don't provide clear definition of use and communicate it and provide some training, kind of like demonstrate that to users, then they'll be like, what do I do here? You know, they're going to really they won't be able to actually partake in it. And so I'm a huge fan of the New Horizons model of hands-on training. So oftentimes I still get to do training with clients and that kind of thing. And it's never lecture style like this, like you guys are having here in a seminar kind of style. It's always, okay, everybody get your mouse, let's go to this Teams, let's do this stuff. And there's something magical that happens. I can't explain it, but just the penetration of adoption and the ideas that form when people are actually using it versus just hearing about it is like 3 times the amount. So that's super key, is not only define the purpose and communicate it, but then we're looking here is then have some training. Like actually demonstrate those use cases. All right, so here's a good example. Do you want to use it for teams for departments? So you form a team for departments, for projects, for cross-functional teams. How have you defined to use channels? Channels are the subfolders inside of this. Okay, you have a channel for each project, each incident, or project phase. So let me give you a couple of scenario examples. So I belong to a team that we do projects a lot together. So a team usually is a security boundary of membership, group of people, okay? But a channel then is a different topic inside of that. So I'm working on anywhere between 2 to 5 projects simultaneously, and I got a channel that lists out all the projects. And I can just hop between those, and it's the same team, okay? But then I have multiple channels for each underlying project. And anytime we have a new project that spins up, we just make a new channel, and we just iterate through it. We have the chat going. We upload files. We hold meetings in there. The videos from our meeting get recorded right inside of that. And so that if somebody new joins our team, then they can participate and see kind of all the history, and they can kind of get up to speed. Or if they're gone for a week or they're on vacation, they can see the context of where that project is left off. So that's one example. Another example I saw, or I was working with some friends, and they are in the IT area, and they deal with like major outages or incidences within their IT infrastructure. So they have a team of people that work on that, and every time they have a new incident, they create a channel for it. So then all the communication and all the information goes into that right there. So they pull in the ticket from ServiceNow, they display it right inside there so people can know who it is they need to contact, who's the stakeholder, what are the steps or actions that have been taken, and they just lay it all out inside of that particular channel. And so that's a good example of now that, okay, we've defined its use case, we've communicated it, and now we've demonstrated it with some training. Hey, you should use it in these particular ways. Great. Okay, so there's some common ideas about its use. All right, next. So here's kind of my action plan, okay? So step 1 is define and communicate the purpose and goal, all right? So here's the 4 things that if I were meeting with you and your organization, this is the stuff I'd want to have you come up with, okay? At number 1, I'd say, well, let's form a governance committee. Let's find, just for Office 365, Teams will be part of that, okay? Define its use case and its strategy. How does it align to what your organization is doing, right? And if it's not aligned, then it's going to be easy target for it to be cut. Okay, what's going to be a communication plan for rolling this out or defining what are the use cases? And do you have a training plan? What does that look like? Is it going to be hiring an outside vendor like New Horizons? Do you have an internal trainer you want to use? Do you have a consultant or a person that can come in and do the work for you? Are you going to do seminar styles? Will it be hands-on? Okay, so defining all those pieces of the puzzle, and this is what I call kind of like the step 1 is for your governance is really just the soft skills of things, the soft things, but the stuff begins to incredibly matter dramatically. So governance committee, use cases, communication plan, and then a training plan. Okay, awesome. So that's step 1. Moving forward, let's go to step 2. Step 2, now we're getting into a little more nitty gritty, a little more IT kind of focused stuff. Let's get into define who can use this stuff, who can use Teams. So the first thing you have to ask is like external users. Okay, people that are not a part of your family or your organization. So if you work at abcwarehouse.com, okay, and so you need to collaborate with some suppliers that don't have that email address, they're not paid there, okay, they're external vendors, do you want to allow those folks to participate in your Teams environment or not? Right? And so if you think about it, it's like kind of like visitors to like a house or a family, right? Who's allowed, there's kind of like every family kind of has their own kind of written or unwritten rules of like, can they just invite anybody off the street to come for dinner? Or is there a little bit of approval process involved? Or is it an absolute no, right? So that's the environment or scenario. So like for my CDH tenant, we do not collaborate with external users in our Teams environment. Use it for internal use only. We have a different tool that we use for external communication and collaboration with our customers, okay? But so that was super important for us to decide. It's gonna be a no for visitors inside our Teams environment, okay? But then there's other places they're like, no, well, like for example, I was working with a local county government, and there's a chief executive there who needs to work with members of other local counties that are adjacent to it. And they collaborate and they work on a regular basis. And their use case was to use Teams to have everybody kind of participate in this centralized place, even if they're not from county government A, but they're from B, C, or D, or E. And so that was super important for them, okay? So that's kind of your next question is, well, who can use this? Is it just internal employees or is it external users, okay? And so you have to decide 2 decisions. You decide, hey, can we use external users with yes or no? And then next is who can add the guests, Okay, so this can be left up to the owner of the team. They can just add people's names, email address in, and those people will get invites, or it has to be done through IT. And usually we're looking for like someone to have to submit a ticket to the help desk, and then the help desk will then add those guest users in. So there's an opportunity to have a little check and balance in that. Usually when I present this scenario to people, the IT guys go, if we have them set up, submit tickets, how am I going to know whether to accept that guy or not? Okay, so some organizations, they don't use tickets. They actually have like a form people fill out, like a Microsoft Power App, like a SharePoint list, and then it goes to that person's manager. If the manager approves it, then that person can then be programmatically added to that team. So that's another kind of alternative, is you can route them to the help desk, or it can be routed or just programmatically done, okay? Or it could just be, we just leave it open. If you're the owner of the team, we just trust you. We trust that you don't send bad emails and that you email with the right people. We're just going to use that same ideas within teams, that you're just going to collaborate with the right people here, right? We're just assuming you are a good corporate citizen, and you're going to do, you're going to keep privatized confidential information confidential and stuff that's not. So that's how it works. So now let me walk through a little demo and kind of show you this in action a little bit, okay? So let me pull up a Teams environment. So when you go into Teams, there's an option here, and I'm looking at this Group 3 retail team. Okay, when I go into it, I can select Manage Team. Okay, and this is where I can set up and I can add members. Okay, so if I go with Add Members, I'm able to type in users that are not part of my individual tenant and add them in. But you can see here, notice it's not finding my email address. This is my literal real email address, cdh.com. Okay, and you can see it's a little bit restricted at this point. All right, it's not allowing me to add in these guest users. Okay, however, let me show you another scenario where it has been turned on. Okay, so let me flip over. This is my live Teams environment, okay, for CDH. Okay, I'm using the browser here just for grins and giggles, but if I look over here in the corner, this is going to show me other tenants where they've taken my account and they've added me as a guest. And so if somebody pings me in these other organizations, I'll get a little red bubble that shows up right here that says, hey, Ryan, hey, what's up with this? Can you do this? And so instead of getting emails, it's all those information, and that high velocity kind of collaboration is all happening through Teams, not just for my internal use, but from me, like one business to 5 other businesses. Okay, and so I find that incredibly helpful, that I can use this Team 1 environment, one-stop shop. I can collaborate internally, but also with these external users. That's really cool. So this is the kind of the end result, is that if you add guests in, that's what's going to show up there. So that's pretty darn cool. All right, so that's kind of your next thing, is deciding visitors and guests. Let me switch this around. All right, now the next thing you have to decide about this is defining who can create teams. Okay, by default, if you just turn this on, okay, if you just enable teams within your tenant, okay, it's turned on for what's called self-service creation. That means it's basically an Oprah show. You can get a team, you get a team, everybody gets a team. You want a team? Make one. You want 5? Go ahead, right? You'll make them till you're happy, right? So you have this setup of what they call self-service creation. Anybody can just create a team whenever they want, okay? And so that usually makes IT people really, really uncomfortable, okay? And so these two ideas are at odds with there, where you have self-service creation or you have administrative review, okay? So let me walk through these ideas, all right? So now, how do you deal with this? So here's the concerns with self-service. Number one, it says, well, Ryan, what about all the space it's going to use? Okay, all these teams taking up all the space. Okay, people, we have 1,500 teams now. We turned it on. There's just so many of them. It's like, no problem. Okay, back in the day when we used to manage SharePoint and we had We had to manage our SharePoint farms with local servers. Space was a real big deal because you could only have on a particular SQL Server database, it was recommended practice that you would have only 200 gigabytes of data, okay, which is not really a ton if you ask me, all right? And so, yeah, excuse me, you had to really think about it and manage how many sites and teams were created and what databases they were. And it was really a very kind of a full-time job to administrate and keep that up. But since Microsoft is doing that all in the cloud, and it's that level of detail is extracted from me, I really don't care. I don't care if we have 1,000 or 500 from a space standpoint. It should. That's what we purchased this service from them so that it just runs and it runs smoothly. So I don't think that's really a great argument at this point, is the management of space. Okay. So, but then the next argument that comes, well, Ryan, there's so many of teams, right? And usually we're thinking about it from a discovery standpoint. Okay. So once again, number one, it's cloud storage. Number two, okay, Teams does have, you can set up what's called a retention policy. So you can then say, hey, if a team is not used after a year, not touched, then we're going to notify the owner. If the owner says, no, it's alive, it has a heartbeat, clear, okay, then it'll then reset for another year. So this, however, this set of features, there's a GUI interface inside Azure, okay, inside and Azure AD. It's incredibly cool. It's a GUI. It's not PowerShell. You can say for all teams, or you can select individual ones, and you can give them a retention policy. Now, here comes the kicker. Yeah, in order to use that feature, you have to have Azure AD Premium, which is usually a $15 a month per user additional fee. Don't quote me on that, but I just know it's more, right? So most organizations I'm dealing with, that's not the case. They usually don't have that level of Azure AD. And so this is so nice, but not for you, okay? So that's number two. So then number three thing I'll say is like, okay, does this really matter, right? Okay, does it really matter that you cannot get every inch or square centimeter of peanut butter out of the peanut butter jar? Does that really matter? Okay, or you just go buy another peanut butter because it's just cheap enough, right? So does this problem even really a significant problem? Because you have to think about it, what we're doing. If I have 1,500 teams, okay, that number matters when I'm going to like discover the teams that are out there. Hey, I wonder what's out there. What teams are there that I'm missing out on that I should join? My personal opinion is I just don't think that's very common. Okay, if I need to be a part of a team, somebody is probably going to say, hey, Ryan, I've added you. You're a member of my new team. Okay, and it's very business directed. Okay, and it's not. I really don't have to go out and discover these other teams. I've never done that. I never had to do that. It's usually people add me in, or I ask to be joined. It's like, oh, you guys use Microsoft Teams for that? Hey, great. Can you add me in? Sure. And they add me as a member, and now it shows up in my interface. I'm never having to go out and say, hey, I wonder what's out there. Okay. Now let's say this still is a problem you think is valid and has value you want to solve. So Microsoft does have what's called auto membership management. So now you can say, hey, if you're a member of the marketing department, you are automatically a member of these 10 teams, right? You have one for the department, one for all your projects that they're currently active on. So that right there is kind of Microsoft's kind of moving toward us to help us manage this high volume of teams that have come through self-service creation. That is really, really way cool, okay? There's also another awesome thing they have is what's called a join code, okay? So you can say generate a code, you give it to somebody, okay? Because if you have a large number of teams, it becomes hard to find them or what the name is. Like, dude, here's the code, type this in, it'll join you in, okay? So I play fantasy soccer, okay? And there's all these little mini leagues, okay? So for the English Premier League. And so there's so many leagues, it's hard to know what the names are. The names are so close. There's like over 1 million different leagues. So, but if you want to have somebody join your league, you just give them the code. They type it in, it automatically adds them in just because the names are just so many, they begin to blend together. So that's one of the cases there. I think that's a helpful tool is the join code, all right? The other thing is this, okay, is if you find that discovery is a problem, teams can be, there's 3 security types of teams. You can have what are called public teams. That means anybody can join, can auto join these teams if they want. They're public, okay? Like a good example of that would be, let's say you form a committee to, a volunteer committee to plan the company barbecue this summer, right? So you want people to join. And we don't want any barriers for people to joining this team and helping out as much as they possibly can, right? So that'd be a good example of a public team, okay? So, but probably the majority type of teams will be private, where people can see them, but they can't join automatically. It has to be approved by the owner, okay? So a private team means that it's only the members of the people, the security people that I put inside here. I want to collaborate with them. This is not my intranet. I'm not trying to broadcast news to the whole company. This is, I have a selective group of 5, 6, 10, 15, 50 people. We need to have heads down, really kind of iterate and accomplish some tasks. So that's where a private team comes in. And so one of the settings you can set up is any new team that's created, default it to private. So then public then becomes the exception. The third type that you can have is what's called a full organization, or the whole org. So it's a team that everybody in the organization is automatically a member of. So this is where you'd want to use a team for like holding company meetings, okay? Or broadcasting whole organizational type of, you can almost use it as a mini intranet, news, reports, but I don't think it's a great practice because now we're using informational stuff and we're mixing it in with your teams, which is usually action-based and like have a lot of responsibility. I would love that to be in another place for me. Okay, that's my opinion. All right, so that's this number 6 there is default to private. And the last thing you guys can set up is what's called a naming convention. Okay, so a naming convention is that when somebody creates the team, they put in a team name, and then it automatically applies a prefix and a suffix. Okay, so here's a good example of it. Naming convention. So if somebody types in the group name here, boom, boom, we can program in a suffix and a prefix. So the suffix here for the example is GRP, and whatever name they type in, and then we can have it fill in an attribute from their user profile. So like we could fill in their department, or it could be like their location, okay? And so here we go. If we look at the steps here, Jim is in the department retail. Jim creates a group called Team 4. The result is GRP Team 4 Retail, okay? And the cool thing is, naming conventions apply to regular users. They create a team, they'll always be named this way. However, if you have administrators of your Office 365 tenant, it doesn't apply the naming convention. It does not apply the naming convention. And so one of the cool things you guys can do, give me a second, I don't know if I have the slide in here, let me check. Oh, I don't have the slide. One of the things you guys can do is that you can have like teams that represent functional organizations within your organization, like departments, divisions. Have your admins create those. So the name is really clean. Human resources, information technology, sales, no prefix, no suffix, right? But then every other team that's created by a member will then automatically have the naming convention put onto it. So now just basically looking at the name, you can see the ones that represent, these are official organizations, areas of our organization, and these are just the ones that were self-created for whatever purpose, maybe projects, maybe just collaboration, anything beyond that. So that is really cool. And I got a little link here that gives you a lot of documentation. This is got to be set up through PowerShell, and I want to kind of do a little demo kind of showing this feature. So let's go check it out. Okay, so here we go. I am I got to be able to see this. All right, I'm currently logged in as Megan. Okay, so Megan is an administrator. All right, so that's what this browser is put in there. Okay, so but let me open up this browser. Okay, and this is, I'm currently logged in as Adele, who's a normal user, just a normal everyday user. So if I go over to Adele, I'm in the Teams environment. I'm going to click this guy down here. Okay, create or join a team. Okay, the naming convention is going to kick in. I'm going to say, okay, notice here a couple things. So this is the discovery concept I'm talking about. So hey, what are the teams that are available? Here they all are. Okay, I can just plop. I could join the team. I could join and join. Notice when we look at the names here, this is public, public, public. So I can immediately join, or I can just pop in the code and I can join right here. So I'm going to say, let's create a new team. All right, let's call this guy team 8. And we notice it automatically applies the prefix and the suffix, which is their department, retail. That's really cool, right? And so this is one of those things that I'm usually okay with the self-service model, especially with we put the naming convention on here. It works out pretty good. So I'll default this to private. I'm going to say next. Let's add some members. Let's add Megan. Great. Let's add her as an owner. Close. And then here is my GRP Team 8 retail. Pretty cool. Notice the naming convention. I have a GRP Team 3 retail. Okay. They're being self-service created. But now let me flip over to Megan. Okay. If I go to Megan, she's using the Teams client here, not the web browser. Okay. And she's going to create a team. And notice here, because she's an administrator, let's go with Team 9. It doesn't prompt me for the naming convention. So this can represent something, whatever meaning we want it to be. Maybe it represents the functional org, or maybe it represents a project or whatever, okay? So then I can say next. Let's add Adele. Kind of reciprocate here, right? Let's make her as an owner. Great, I'm gonna say create. And notice over here, Team 9 gets created with no prefix and no suffix that you see here for the teams that was created by Adele. So this is a good technical component that can be added or configured for your team's environment, is what's called the naming convention. And so the whole idea behind the naming convention is you, in the context of a discovery, what teams are out there? How do I determine one from the other, especially if you really like this self-service creation, because you don't want barriers. You want people to be able to collaborate. That's the whole point, right? We don't want to slow that down. And so you guys can set this up, enable self-service, and have a little more, okay, I'm okay with this. The naming convention, that's how we can visually and tell the difference between the different teams that are there. Very cool, very cool. All right, so if I look at the action steps of who can use, okay, so here's your 3 action steps. Number 1, you have to define what are you gonna do with your guests? Are you gonna allow external users or not? Okay, and then how are they managed? They managed by IT or by a kind of request basis, or are you gonna use this, or are you just gonna let people just put them in and be responsible corporate citizens? Next, what are you gonna do with self-service? Are you gonna allow people to just provision their own teams or not? Okay, and if so, okay, have you created a defense? Have you thought about what that's gonna be like, right? Let's say you turn that off. I mean, that means IT, you guys got to provision these, okay, for every request that comes in. And that's when I say, are you sure that you're sure that you're sure that you're sure you really want to do that? Do you have staff to handle that influx of teams that are going to come in? Good question. And then lastly, are you interested in using a naming convention? Okay, so those are the 3 different action plans. All right, now let me throw something out here. Here's the bonus item. So we're a partner with a company called Valo. They have a product here called Teamwork 2.0, and it's something you can purchase and you put it into your Office 365 tenant. And let me show you what it is. Basically, it is a tool to help manage teams. And the way it works is, let's see here. It creates a form that users fill out, members, owners, and a value, and then it creates an interface for people to then see and discover all the different teams, okay? And you can actually create a template that when they create a team, here it has these channels automatically created for them. It has this kind of template, or it creates a Yammer group in it, or another, not a Yammer group. You can configure what its implementation is going to be. So we found that a lot of customers, that they really want to govern this. They want to be more restricted. And I show them the naming convention. I show them these things like, I'm still Ryan, I'm just not okay or comfortable with that. So awesome. Then you should probably use this Teamwork 2.0. Okay, it's a one-time tool put in there, and you guys can manage it from a request basis without having to go through tickets. So I wanted to throw that out there to you guys. Valo, Teamwork 2.0. You can get a hold of me. We can get you in contact and get that rolling for you. Alrighty. All right. So I'm going to bring my presentation to the end. There are a whole bunch of more governance things to cover on this, okay? But a lot of it has to do with like use of the tool, right? So how do you govern so you don't get overwhelmed with too many notifications? Those are just kind of features of it. But what I've covered, what I call is kind of the main getting started places. And there's still maybe about 30 questions altogether that need to get answered or configured about your team's environment. Okay, like for example, guests, if you allow them, what can they do inside Teams? Can they schedule meetings? Can they modify a channel? Can they delete their messages once they type them? So there's a whole series of like prompted questions that Microsoft gives us templates for to walk you guys through those kinds of things. All right, so what can you guys do after today? All right, number one, you guys go out to the Microsoft Help Center. All right, fantastic, information. They have a whole area just on end user training, and you can find webinars, active webinars that look like this, give you active dates. You can sign up for Microsoft learn about the education side of things, using for education purposes, for business, you name it. There is a overview in the same area of just, hey, how do I just deploy this? Okay, really kind of what I'm talking about here, just it walks you through step by step, right? You can engage with me, okay, a partner, right? And have us facilitate and go through that training. Okay, you can get a hold of New Horizons, okay, or we will, and say, hey, well, we want to do large-scale kind of training in a classroom setting or a power hour scenario, okay? And so that's where a great training vendor like New Horizons would come into play. And so those are some final resources. Once again, if you want to connect with me, I'm on Twitter at Ryan Charnock 9. I'm also on LinkedIn. You have cdh.com. And you can email me too, and nhlearningsolutions.com. Okay, so I'm going to open it up here. I'm going to stick around. I think I'm done a little early, which is not bad. So, but I just wanted to touch base and open it up, see if anybody has any questions.
Yep, and we did have a question come in while you were presenting. For everybody else, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to go into the questions panel and you can post it there. First question, can there be different templates for naming conventions, such as for projects, departmental teams, etc.?
Through PowerShell, no, it's just one. So if it's created by an end user, it'll use the naming convention. If an administrator creates some, then they can create their own. It's free-form text. They can just type whatever they want, but there's no naming convention per se or framework that puts around it. Okay, so but that's a good thing to do. I worked with an organization, any team that represented an official department, they put DPT in front of it just when they created it. So just give that visual cue that that's an official department. Great question.
Okay, a few more questions came in.
Sure.
Is there a way to run a report or find unused teams without the Azure AD premium retention policy?
I'd have to get back with you. They just changed the admin center. They have a brand new Skype and Teams interface. So I would imagine that it's in there. And if not, it's coming soon. I don't have an explicit answer for you. I think the answer for me is I don't know, but I would guess yes.
Okay, let's see. When balancing content between the Microsoft Teams doc files and other team sites on SharePoint, what are your recommendations?
Yeah, I definitely have some. Here's what I would do. I would create a portal. Okay, so this is a diet. I'm just drawing kind of a pyramid here. This would be the homepage of a portal. This is corporate information. Then underneath that, I would create communication sites for every department, and I'll attach them to the portal hub. And this stuff should be read only to the whole organization. Okay. Then below that, this is where teams should live. And teams should not be open to the whole company. They should be very, very privatized. So if I have team 1, 2, and 3, okay, these ones matter to me. And if I put a document in here, it's just to the collective membership. But if I have a document I need to get published to the whole company, then I put it in my communication site here inside SharePoint. Okay, and so it becomes a matter of, I don't know, the story I traditionally tell people is think of it like a house. If you take a sign that says lemonade stand, lemonade's for sale, and you put it in the front yard, it's for everybody to see. That's kind of like the public area of your intranet. But if you take the same sign and you put it inside your house, it's just for a selective membership, the people of your house. That's kind of like inside your team. Okay. And if you take that same file or same message and you put it in your bedroom, that's personalized just for you. That's your OneDrive. So those are these kind of these three major security contexts: portal, SharePoint, everybody in the whole company, Teams, your communities, and then OneDrive is going to be personal. So there are 5 other ways of doing this. This is the model I really like, and I can communicate it quickly. And notice this took all of like 60 seconds for me to communicate. Organizations kind of go, oh, that totally makes sense. This is front yard content. I'm going to put it up in the SharePoint site. Oh, no, this is in the house. Put it in your Teams. No, it's just for me. I put it in OneDrive. And that becomes this like, because those 3 tools, they do pretty similar things. You can put a document in OneDrive and make it open to the whole company. But that's like having a lemonade stand in your bedroom. Not sure you're going to want to do that, because if you ever leave the company, that process will then die as soon as we decommission your OneDrive. Does that make sense? So that's a really good question. I like that. That's kind of one of my favorites.
Okay. Actually, a few more questions. Can you control who can see certain channels within a team, or is this only controlled at the team level?
Yeah, it's controlled at the team level. So if you do need that, then you'd create a new team. So the team is the security boundary, and assumption is they see everything inside of it. I do believe that's a feature that Microsoft is working on to being released. If you go out to Microsoft's website, User Voice, they have a list of the roadmap of features that are going to be coming out, and you can vote for them, the ones that you want to be added, and actually take your votes into consideration. It's kind of cool.
Another question, what all does Teams create when a new team is spun up? For instance, SharePoint, Exchange group, anything else?
Yep. So if you create a team, okay, it's going to create, let's see here, a Office 365 group, and that group will have an email address. Okay, and inside of a group, it'll have a calendar, it'll have a planner, it'll have email address, it'll have a OneNote file, okay, notebook, okay, but wait, there's more. It'll also create a SharePoint site, okay, and so anytime you upload a document, doesn't matter what the interface is, whether through the groups interface, which comes through Outlook, okay, so if you have a document, you upload it through Teams or through groups, it actually resides inside SharePoint in a document library. And the way the architecture works, every channel is really a different folder inside of a single library. It's cool. All right, and if you want, I could show you very quickly what that looks like. So here's Team 9. Okay, so I go to Files. Let's upload a file, and we'll just trace it, okay? Sure, we'll go with that. Okay, master cover memo, awesome. Notice of new executive document, fantastic. Okay, so Team 9. So then if I log into, I'm not logged in here, am I? So Team 9, this is Team 9 through Adele, she's going to go to the groups interface. The groups then shows up through Outlook. Team. Where are you? Team 9. I don't want to have to log in and out here, but it looks like I'm going to have to. Oh, no, let's see it. Let's see it. Here we go. Oh, look, let's refresh. I got Megan. I got the right browser up here. Team 9, where are you? You're not showing up. Let's go. We'll find it anyways. So team 9, this is it right here. Notice it says open in SharePoint. I apologize. It's not showing up. There's probably a little sync issue. But this is going to take me directly to the SharePoint site behind the scenes. Notice it says team 9. There's the document right here. Very, very cool. And notice it says private group. This is Microsoft Teams. They might have just changed this interface that if you create a team inside Microsoft Teams, it doesn't show up inside Outlook like that it used to. Let's see here. I just tried clicking on it. There you go, Team 9. It's got a really long name because it used the email address there. So that's the team group SharePoint site. And you'll notice there that for the SharePoint site, if I go to site here, you notice it's not a communication site. It's a traditional like team site. It had the quick launch bar on the side. So that's the visual cue to let you know that, hey, this SharePoint site is connected to a group and possibly a Microsoft team. Great question.
Okay, a follow-up question to that. So if this is running on SharePoint, can you control permissions within SharePoint if you cannot in Teams?
You can. It's not great. So if you go over here to members, it gives this here. It says I can add members, and there's this interface that's here. And if I go to the site settings, you can get to the advanced settings, and you can break inheritance. Manage site features, but you gotta really work at it. Notice here it's hidden. The managed site feature stuff is really, the permissions is really hidden. And so Microsoft has really done a good job of trying to abstract that operation from us. And they really just say, hey, if you have different permissions, just go make another team, right? It's okay. Go make more of them, right? And so they've made that operation traditional, like what I call broken inheritance permissions. They've made that hard to do. You have to like enable site collection features. You have to enable site features. Then the permissions, the advanced permission stuff shows up, and still it gets a little clunky.
Okay.
You think about it, that's also the main complaint people have about previous versions of SharePoint is that permission management was just so wonky and so difficult to manage. At Chrysler, we had chemical engineers with master's degrees spending 4 hours a week managing permissions of groups. Not a good use of their title.
Absolutely. So just to wrap up real quick, yes, there will be a recorded version of this webinar available. And for those that we were unable to get to your question today, either Ryan or I will follow up directly with you to make sure we get your questions answered. Again, thank you for everybody for participating today, and we look forward to meeting you again some other day.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks a lot.